mountain just being like, whew, just gonna shake this off. I got a little excess here. And then it's like, whoa.
New year, new mountain, you know?
Yeah, exactly. New year, new mountain. Hi, I'm Gabe.
And I'm Kat.
And we're the Ghouls next door. Talking about spooky stuff.
Every day, probably.
Every week, at least.
Yeah.
At least. Yes, we are the weekly media analysis podcast from a horror lens where we explore the real world reasoning behind our cinematic fears. This month, we're talking about natural disasters, which are terrifying and inevitable, and we are powerless against them.
Yeah. You really can't hide. You can't run. You really just kind of have to give in to Mother Nature. It's rude, honestly, to do anything else. It's just kind of like, all right, it's our fault. We exist. So
yeah, every day you just gotta wake up and pray that Mother Nature's in a good enough mood not to murder you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just all a part of the process. Being a human on this little planet.
Yeah. It's one little planet that all we got. A fun thing, just kind of going off of our natural disasters time during COVID pandemic where we don't leave our homes. I did this interesting thing where a few weekends ago, I went on a virtual tour of Mount Fuji. And it was fun. Avalanches are rare at Mount Fuji. They happen, but rare. But it is an active volcano. We're not going to cover volcanoes in our series. I said that. But it's totally real. And in fact, when we were doing it, the guide was like, there's an active volcano that's currently erupting as we are talking. And I looked it up, and there it was. It says erupting, and it's in red.
God.
I was like, what? The horrors just never stop. But it was really fun. It was virtual, and you just kind of like are there in a Zoom call, and you have a guide that's like, here's the fifth station of Mount Fuji. This is what you would see, and people are walking. This is the seventh station that I'm showing visually. And like if you're looking at the picture, you can see me and my boyfriend Mike on the side there, and then the guide is right under us. His name is Kenji, and we just kind of went through, and we got to see like all the different views of what you would see if you were going there. It was like an hour long as opposed to like a day and a half, which is what it would have taken to do that. It's some really cool imagery, and they have like a book that you can like read and stuff and see. It definitely made me want to go, but I would have to do a lot of work on my physical capabilities to be able to climb a mountain, because it's pretty intense. It's like at one point you like sleep, you're just living off of ramen, and you also get like you get the sickness because it's high and the air is thin, and so you get altitude sickness is what it's called.
Yeah,
terrifying.
No, I would never.
Get dizzy,
I can't walk around just like the world regular.
Yeah, I don't think asthma is allowed.
If you make air thinner, that's like, I go outside in winter and I don't have like a full head, hat, scarf, earmuff situation, and I am having an asthma attack immediately. So
yeah,
it's cool that the virtual option exists. Horrifying if an avalanche were to happen. Because then you're just watching someone have very bad time.
Well, it wasn't what I thought was going to happen was that we would like be talking to someone via GoPro of some sort while they're trekking up the mountain. That did not happen. The guide was not physically on the mountain. He was also with us. And that made me feel better because I was like, I am not the kind of person that feels comfortable like watching someone else do physical labor for me. Like, I don't want you to go up this mountain panting, having sickness, or just like snoozing and then talking to me because I'm too lazy or just not fit enough to be able to do this. But no, that was not the case. The mountain is actually closed because of the pandemic. And so this is how the guides were supplementing their income. So they're doing virtual tours. And so there's a bunch of us. There's some people who were from Japan who were in the call. There was someone who is living in Boston but is from Indonesia. So it was like, it was really cool because it was like all of us getting to know each other. It was mostly Mike's family, but it was still pretty cool to talk about. And Mike has been there and got up to like the 5th, 6th station or something, but then they ran out of time. It was late because you have to like sleep. Like you have to get up to a certain station and you have to sleep there, and then you go up because your body has to like adjust, and it's nighttime. But it was an experience to say the least. I definitely was like, I want to give it a shot. And it looked easy because I was in a virtual world and he was just showing pictures of people. And I was like, I know that's not what it's like. And the like symptoms for like the sickness reminded me of Made in Abyss that I told you about in the anime, where it's like when you try to come up, you get like nauseous. And so it was like that first or second level of the abyss. And I was like, oh no, I don't want to bleed from all of my orifices. No. That doesn't happen in Fuji. But
that's good.
There's a chance that it could erupt, which is, how it works.
That's fun.
Today we're not talking about volcanoes, but we are talking about mountains that are covered in snow. And then the snow decides it wants to go for a ride down it.
To do
and it doesn't matter what's in its way.
Yeah.
You?
100%.
Well. People? I don't care. Little town? You're in my way.
Yeah. It's just nature during like its purge.
Yeah.
You know how like we don't have a movie purge where humans just murder each other? It's just like nature's like, y'all are doing too much. So this is my time. This is my time to shine. And we're just going to knock it all out.
Yeah.
You go away now.
It's the mountain just being like, whew, just going to shake this off. I got a little excess here. And then it's like, whoa.
New year, new mountain,
Yeah, exactly. New year, new mountain.
It was good.
It's thinner, She's thinner now. She's like, I was cold, but now it's getting warm, so I got to get rid of this. So we'll definitely talk about avalanches and what causes them. And we are going to be talking about the film Devil's Pass,
unfortunately.
Which is Yes, unfortunately. It's funny because it is the only horror movie that we're really covering, like specifically horror. Like the other things are horrific, right?
They're like thriller.
But this is this is horror, right? Like that's the whole point of it. And it definitely takes a lot of tropes from other horror films, which I'll talk about at length because I'm also mad that we watched this film. I'll never get that time back. But we will talk about that. And then we'll also talk about the event that they're talking about in the film, which is significantly more interesting.
Yes.
And worth your time. And it's also cool because just this year it was solved. So let me tell you about Devil's Pass from 2013. A bikini contest turns into a horrifying affair when it is hit by a shark avalanche. I'm kidding. That's not.
You sure?
Avalanche Sharks.
That sounds like the movie we watched. About the equivalent.
I wish we watched this instead. Avalanche Sharks is a real film in which there was an avalanche and now there's sharks there. I didn't watch this film. I don't know what it's about. Besides that, I don't know.
Sounds like a fun time.
Yeah, I saw some cool images. We got this of a shark coming out of the snow.
Excellent.
Very loose snow, I guess. How are you getting through there? This one?
Yeah.
Popping up like Jaws. And I figured this was a great accompaniment to Devil's Pass because it was so bland, and obviously just trying to hit all the tropes of horror. And so I thought, it's a bikini contest in snow. So obviously as you said, Kat, it's for the male gaze. There's a lot of objectifying of women and like what have you. So I was like, oh, this is pretty much the same film. Honestly, I couldn't tell you the difference of this film.
Creepy man on a mountain, just, you know, being the worst.
As they are. And they were in this film. But I'll tell you what the real film is about. Because I'm nice.
Cool.
So Devil's Pass is from 2013, and it is about a group of students go to the location of the infamous Dyatlov Pass Incident to make a documentary. But things take a turn for the worse as the secret of what happened there is revealed. And it is by Rennie Harlan. And I did read an article where someone like really loved Rennie Harlan, and they were like, finally, they made a film and it's awesome. And I was like, did we watch the same film? Not to like hate on Rennie or anything, but yeah, like they loved it. Such
high praise for something so horrible.
It was very bad. It's been a long time since I watched a bad horror movie and didn't enjoy it. You know?
True. Yeah.
Usually I have a good time, and this one I didn't have a good time.
Yeah, it was like all the characters just sucked. And it's like fun in films where at least you like kind of like the people in it. That wasn't the case here. They were just the worst I've ever watched on TV. Or it wasn't TV. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. On the screen. Yeah. I have so many things that I'm upset about by this film. One, this film makes me really hate that I went to film school. Technically, I got a degree in media, which is broader because I wanted to do broadcast, telecommunications, mass media. But when I started school, I actually was a film student, and I left because my fellow film students were exactly like this. They were just like, I hated it. I hated them. And I hated how everyone was entitled. And there's like when I was going to film school, my mom would always call me Tarantino because she knows that I don't like him. And so that's what everyone, like, if you ask any film student who their favorite director was, it was almost always Quentin Tarantino. And I was like, you're out.
Ew.
It's like if you ask someone what their favorite book is, and if they say The Great Gatsby, I tune you out because that means you stop reading in high school. And Great Gatsby isn't even that good. So that's why I hate it. The other reason why I hated this film is because it gives found footage films a bad name. And if you listen to this podcast, you know that I love found footage. That is my favorite subgenre of horror for a lot of reasons. One of the things about found footage is that you need to have a reason within the narrative that explains why there's cameras present. And also, if the camera is good, so unlike something like Cloverfield or even Wreck, like in Quarantine, like those aren't the best cameras, but like in Paranormal Activity, right? Like I forget his name. It was Mika was like well off, so he had a nice camera. Right? Yeah. But like you have to explain why there's a camera, and if it's a good camera, you have to explain why they would have access to a good camera, which means a lot of the times there is like a professional film crew reasoning behind it. And in this case, it's students. It's film students who need to get to the bottom of something, which I always find kind of silly because it's like, if this thing is serious enough and is like important, why do they think so highly of themselves that it's just like, this wasn't going to get solved unless these children investigate it. Like these people have taken like 2 classes. Like, there's no way, even with
it's different when they're professors.
Yeah.
You know, because they would get grants for, you know, it's just like, they didn't even seem like they were in grad school. They seemed like they were young.
I think they were in grad school only because it's their thesis or something. But I still think it's weird because they're like, we're going to go investigate the Dyatlov Pass incident where 9 students died. And the school is like, yeah, that sounds safe.
We don't care if you die.
Fun. Like, I want to know, like, that's what they should have included at the end was, like, what's the repercussions for this school for putting their students in harm's way like that? Like, no.
Yeah.
But there are some really great found footage films. You know that I love them. And there are ones where the film crew is an integral part of the story. Like, they are characters that you care about and add to the story. Like, you sympathize with them, like you were saying, Kat. Like, The Last Exorcism, Wreck, Creep, The Bay. Like, So many, because they actually add to it, and you believe who they are. You believe them as genuine characters. In this film, they're very much just tropes, and they are the worst parts of film students that exist. They're doing nothing. They're just typical Americans, despite being played by English actors, and it's very clear because they lose their accent quite often. But I think it's like on purpose to have these like annoying American students traipsing through another country and being like
they know
you're
what they're
insensitive. You're trying to hide this from us. We are all 22 years old and we demand the truth, and you need to tell us because we have a camera, and that means we matter. And that's not the truth. When I was reading up on the film and why I picked it, because I was like, oh, this kind of like sounds like a slightly bad version of like The Descent, but in snow. And I was like, yeah, the monsters kind of look like it. It's like you're spelunking just in snow. It's not. It's not that. Yeah. It's awful. And so instead, you just get a bad kind of whiny student film. It does some very interesting things regarding like the narrative structure of like, oh, here's the beginning, we're setting up for the film, and then it's like, they're all dead. And then it's like, but let's see what happened, which was like, I appreciate that because that's kind of fun, but that was like it. But we are asking fundamental questions in this series to really like hone in on it being a natural disaster film. And so one of the questions is, does it accurately represent the horrors of a natural disaster? No. No, it doesn't. Nope. Only in that the Avalanche actually plays little to no part in this film, which is kind of funny considering the mystery that they're trying to solve in their documentary was actually caused by an avalanche. And we will talk about, because it's been found out. It's scienced. Science got to it, not students investigating with cameras, actual scientists. And so it's been solved, and Kat will talk about the solve, and I'll talk about the actual incident. But there's like nothing for this avalanche. But there was something interesting that I thought about when I was watching it, was that the avalanche in this film, spoilers for this film I don't want anyone to watch, is triggered on purpose. Like the whole thing was that they went there. You have to file all these reports so that the Russians know that they're there. It's similar to The Descent, where they you have to like register to be like, I'm going to spelunk in this place, so if anything goes wrong, people know where to find me. And that was the problem in The Descent. With this, it's like you have to, file all these things so you can have the rights to go up there into people's land. And so the Russians know they're there, and to hide their super dark secrets, pre the wars, the wall is down, kind of things. So the Cold War, they try to kill these students, but in a way that looks like an accident, so they can cover it up. And so I thought it was interesting that the natural disaster was actually used as a weapon to hurt these nosy and intolerable Americans. So I did some digging to see if humans can actually cause avalanches. And in a quick Google search, I came to an alarming response that thanks to avalanche.org, which says in 90% of avalanche accidents, the victim or someone in the victim's party triggers the avalanche. So cool. Skiing is not in my future plans. Yep. Not good. I've been snowboarding twice, and it hurt a lot both times. Yeah. I have no
desire.
It's like when you're snowboarding, I don't know why I thought that would be a good idea. Your like legs are attached. Your feet are attached to the one board, and it's like I can't do them individually. So I think I'd have to ski, or whatever like roller skating version of being in the snow would be. I can ice skate. That's it. Yeah.
I used to like ice skating and rollerblading, but never ever in life would I intentionally go on a mountain and where snow exists. I don't like snow when it's just like winter. I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had fun. It just like most of the time I spent it on my butt because I couldn't go anywhere.
I just feel like so many people get injured. So like, why? It just seems silly. I don't know. But maybe it's someone's calling and they're just super excited about it. But I just really don't get the appeal. I'm like, be cold all day. Maybe dislocate something. That sounds real fun.
Well, you're maybe always trigger avalanche for that.
That's fair. I know,
dislocation.
but I'm just like, why? I just don't get it. I just don't understand. It's something that's just like not within my purview of understanding. And maybe someone can explain it to me, but I think I just don't. Why? That's how I feel.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, when I did the snowboarding, I didn't start at the bunny hill like I should have because I was with people who already knew how to do it. And so I was like, yeah, I'll go. But I'll tell you, it's super scary to be on that lift. And so we actually covered the Dyatlov Pass Incident and the Donner Party Incident in our snow episode where we covered Frozen, not that one, the horror movie. And that one's really scary because you're on the ski lift. And then that's like, what
that
a
was
horrifying experience. Yeah. Terrifying. Like one of the top 10 like scariest films. Because you're just like, it's real, right? Like there's no monsters. It's just real life. It's just your
wolves
bad decision.
And bone breaking.
Yeah. And you're frostbitten.
Yeah.
So it's a scary time sometimes. But I wanted to figure out, past just like, okay, accidents, can it be triggered on purpose, which is what happens in the film. So according to snowsafe.co.uk, which is the Mountain Rescue Services, they actually trigger controlled avalanches on purpose and for good reason. And so in an article titled Controlled Avalanches, Why Do Mountain Rescue Services Set Them Off and How? They explain that a key reason for triggering these avalanches is strangely for safety reasons. What happens is that the mountain rescue will often trigger small controlled avalanches in order to prevent larger ones from occurring. Mountain towns, railway lines, and ski resorts where avalanches pose a risk to life will often see and hear explosive charges used to cause smaller avalanches. So you get a little avalanche as a treat.
Yeah.
We could do little avalanche now, so not big avalanche later. We're just like, let's brush off this mountain. She's feeling a little heavy. Give her a little self-care, and then she's fine. She won't shed it all at once. So it's like, it's smart. It makes sense. And they do in the film hear like the explosion. And then they like linked it. They were like, oh, in the story, which was one of the only things I enjoyed, was that they were like, people reported red lights in the sky. It must have been the flares. But actually the red lights were something reported much later after the incident. So it's unrelated. But it was still fun in the film for it to happen. So you might think, how do they cause avalanches on purpose? And according to this article, they use explosive charges. These are triggered usually in predetermined areas via helicopter, Gas-X cannons, or metal pipes fixed to the side of the mountains on high-risk slopes. And if you're wondering what a Gas-X cannon is, because I was, they are large pipes facing downward, which emit hot gases at vulnerable slopes to set off the small controlled avalanches. So like explosions for fun and for safety. Explosions for safety. That's like my new band name. So,
Bakugo would love it.
Who?
Bakugo from
My Hero Academia. Murder Death Boy. Yeah.
Yes.
He would be hired. They should have a whole set where he does that as his job. He can like do that for one of his like little training jobs.
Hero missions. He would love it. Just big.
Go do little avalanche for a treat, and then we save people. So in this film, even though the Russians were not causing the controlled avalanches to protect neighboring towns, they are attempting to protect humanity from this terrible film. So honestly, they're the real heroes at the end of the day. So the other part, with that. The other part of this series that we're covering is, what is this film trying to teach us about humanity? And even though it barely touches on real avalanches, like at all, I will say that it represents humanity pretty spot on in that people often flock to the scene of crimes or disasters to cover it for fame and neglect all the warning signs. Like, they fail to acknowledge that people actually died here and deserve some respect. And so it was like, that was one thing I like really disliked. Just like, I feel that way about most true crime anyway. It's like, you got to give some respect to the incident, which is like in our episode on the Donner Party and Dyatlov Pass. I cover some of that content from a podcast that I don't listen to anymore because of that. So, but
Yeah.
they did do a lot of research for the Donner Party episode, and there's like one of the members of that podcast that actually does work. But one thing I was like, oh my God, this is the most human thing I've ever seen, is that they actually have like a part where she spray paints the like red figures in the snow, like a crime scene, and then puts the image of the person who died on a stick. And he's like, this is where they died. And I was like, man, that is so film student. Like, look at me getting to the bottom of this.
Yeah.
And the film also does show images of the actual deaths from the Dyatlov Pass incident. And there's like no warning. It's just on there in the beginning. And I was like, whoa, what are we doing? Just kind of putting it out there. The other disaster that is being covered in this film is the Dyatlov Pass Incident, which I said we covered in previous episodes, though, you know, our script for it was very loose and not very informative at all.
Yeah.
But the episode itself, I know we put a lot of work into. So feel free to take a listen to get more in depth on like what happened to the Donner Party, because there's a lot more than what people think. Also, not a lot of people know about the Donner Party, and I thought that was wild. But also the Dyatlov Pass incident, now that it's like in the, you know, in the headlines because it was solved, you can listen to some of the scenarios that people envisioned caused it, because Kat did some really intensive research into it. But here's a rundown of the Dyatlov Pass incident, which is actually named after one of the members. So on February 2nd, 1959, a group of 9 college student ski hikers died in the Ural Mountains of Western Russia under mysterious circumstances. They were traveling from Sverdlovsk, which is what it was called in the Soviet time, and now it's called Yekaterinburg. And they left in January. So it was a month before they were found dead. It was fun with the Russian words because I've been playing Pandemic Legacy, the prequel, and it was against like, you know, the Soviet Union. And so it took a lot of things took place in Novosibirsk, and I had to look it up, and I would argue with Mike because he wouldn't say it right. It's like, we're going to pronounce this correctly. So, according to an article in The Atlantic titled The Russian Conspiracy Theory That Won't Die by Alec Lunn, they plan to ski about 200 miles over 16 days, summiting several peaks along the way, allowing enough time to be back for the spring semester. After catching a lift with some lumberjacks and following a sleigh driver north, the group skied out of an abandoned village on January 28th, eventually making it to their final campsite on February 1st. Searchers later found their tracks along a frozen river, and upon reaching Dead Mountain, which is what it's called, stumbled across a half-collapsed tent on a steep, windswept slope. Inside, food supplies and outer clothing were laid out as if the group had been about to cook dinner. 9 pairs of boots stood along the wall. Bizarrely, the tent appeared as if it had been slashed open from within, which is spooky. And that's why you hear the details of this case, and it's very obvious why people were like, all right, let's all aboard the conspiracy train. Like, what aren't they telling us? I think also on top of the fact that like it's real, like the circumstances in which these bodies were found are really confusing. The time it took to get to the bodies because of the snow, and also because it was during the Soviet Union where they were closing off, like Stalin was like, nobody's knowing nothing. Like it was like, we are not reporting on anything. So it wasn't for years that the news even was allowed to be out. And so then there was all these conspiracies because it was like, what are they keeping from us? Is it government, things, which is kind of what this film lies on. But all of the victims were found wearing little to no clothing and no shoes because all their shoes were inside the tent. 2 of the hikers had fractured skulls and another 2 cracked ribs, but in no case was there any external injury. So it was all just like internal badgering of their bodies.
Yeah.
This is one of the biggest things that people like freak out about is one of the corpses was missing its tongue. And so it appears that based on the circumstance of how the tent was found, that the hikers had fled from their tents in the middle of the night, cutting their way out from the inside, and at some point had removed their clothing. One of them also had larger, like more than expected amount of radiation on them, which is also commented on. And they didn't actually find all of the bodies until after the snow started to thaw, which only further complicated the investigation. So a bunch of theories popped up about the Dyatlov Pass incident. All those crazy rumors from like pseudoscience, real science, paranormal conspiracy. Kat goes into all of them, or a good amount of them, in our episode about it. But here's a little snack version of them. One of the predominant ideas was the paradoxical undressing, which is scoffed at in the film, but is a real occurrence that happens when people experience hypothermia, which is where you remove your clothing because you are perceiving your body to be hot, like overwhelmingly on fire. And I don't know if you've ever felt that way, where you're like that cold that you just feel hot. I've had that before. Like, you know, so you end up like taking, and you kind of like snap for reason, right? It's kind of like if you're, some people, when they have a stroke, they remove themselves, they move to a different location, even though it makes more sense to be surrounded by people who could help you. Your brain is like, we have to go somewhere else. So your brain doesn't always make sense when it is, you know, up against things happening to your body that is stressful for it. In fact, I even mentioned in that episode that there was strange behavior from a member of the Donner Party that they exhibited after experiencing hypothermia, which resembled the theories in the Dyatlov Pass incident. And these are totally two different things. Like, one is in America, happening to people trying to find a new home. And then there's like, you know, the Russians. So what are the odds? The other conspiracies are government cover-ups, which is explored in this film. That, you know, what are they keeping from us? They talk about the Philadelphia experiment. And then, of course, aliens or Yetis. I also once listened to a podcast that explained away their behavior as being a result of this high-pitched sound that avalanches cause. Because it's like when it moves... it was something. I drowned it out because I was like, this is crazy. I've listened to some really ridiculous reasoning behind things on podcasts all the time. But this person was like, it was sound that scrambled their brain, and then they all got naked and did stuff. But essentially it was that, you know, they were cold. They leave the tent. There is an avalanche. Kat will get into it. So odds are it was not aliens. The film actually only really briefly touches on the actual incident. Instead, it leans heavily into the film students are the only ones to get to the bottom of it trope. And they show like there's like local enthusiasm, but also like the more understandable resistance to these foreigners who are just traipsing around crime scenes. And then an article on the AV Club titled Devil's Pass by Mike D'Angelo, who we've actually referred to a few times in our show, sums up my feelings of disappointment after watching a film that promoted itself heavily in relation to the incident and then like didn't bring anything to the table that was of any interest, because it's not really about the Dyatlov Pass incident. So D'Angelo says it's about 5 blandly good-looking American kids who decide to make a documentary about the Dyatlov Pass incident, but subsequently disappear in the same area, leaving behind, sigh, their camera equipment. That's it. That's all they say. But D'Angelo goes on to complain reasonably about the film's similarities to Blair Witch Project, which is a found footage film that is near and dear to my heart because it ignited the whole thing, which I love. A whole subgenre that I love. And there's so many similarities. There's the footprints in the snow left in the middle of the night by someone or something unknown, only to be discovered in the morning and make you upset. There's the female director who's spearheading the adventure and is like pushing everything forward and might not be reliable. There's the crying and sobbing shot at the end when all hope is lost. There's a very fun website Conspiraleaks that released the footage. So it was all like, this is not what they want you to see. We have the whole truth. The thing about the Blair Witch Project, though, is that it had phenomenal marketing and was kickstarting a very unique subgenre of horror. Like, the whole intent of it was like, this is new. It's never been done. But The Devil's Pass is one of many of these films, and it offers nothing new to the genre. Its twist ending was lackluster and like confusing. Just like, why are we doing this? And I feel like whenever you bring time travel and dimensions stuff into a narrative in the end, you're kind of failing your viewers, because it really was like a different movie at the end. And I was like, what are we doing? Why did I go through all of that to get here? I would have rather you had those cool things in the beginning. Is this a monster movie, or is it a time travel movie, or is it a mockumentary? Like, what are we doing? The monsters are silly. I don't understand. Oh, my microphone fell. I'm so angry. I'm destroying things. The monsters were really silly, and I don't understand why they were afraid of her when she was throwing the chains around. Like, they would evaporate. Like, I guess because they were, like, teleporting or whatever. But, like, I don't know why. Like, there was no reason why she would think that and why they would react that way. Like, it's just some chains. You've been eating people up willy-nilly because you're just monsters who could do that. Like, leaving tongues in places you shouldn't be leaving tongues, but you're afraid of this lady. And then also, like, why isn't it triggering, like, a weird, you know, paradox thing because you're also in there? Like, you met yourself. Anyway, I hated that the characters were all tropes without any development. They all were just like Scooby-Doo. And they even remark on that. They mention Scooby-Doo. Like, you're all Scooby-Doo characters. I hate how they dealt with the one hot one. She just died. And not even in any way cool. It was really sad. And again, the British actors who their accent slipped, and it was so annoying. It was really annoying for me because I was like, why aren't you just British then? Like, if you're going to say Slaughterhouse 5 instead of Slaughterhouse 5, or like Alexander instead of Alexander, like, pick one. Just pick one and do it. And why didn't anyone catch them? Like, for consistency. Anyway, what I'm saying about this film is that it's bad. That's it. That's what I got.
It's good. It's good. That's what the people came for. It's bad. Don't watch it. I feel mutually, honestly, about the entire thing. I was just like, this is why. I feel equally about the film how I feel about snow, mountains.
Yeah. Why do?
Why we do. But yeah, I have stuff too. Might talk about it.
Sure, if you want to.
Yeah. So in our facts section today, we are going to talk about avalanches. You know, like, why are they? What do they do? What is it? And an avalanche are masses of snow, ice, and rocks that fall rapidly down a mountainside. They can be deadly. I feel like that goes without saying, but it is from National Geographic about avalanches. What do you do in the case of an avalanche? I think we really just don't see a good representation of this in the film. But, you know, if you are in snow murder land, what do you do? And this is brought to you by Travel and Leisure's article, What Do You Do If You're Caught in a Path of an Avalanche, written by Elizabeth Presque. It comes with 6 easy steps that you can follow to avoid snow murder. I've added my own thoughts to this list for your safety and enjoyment, which it's basically saying the same thing the person did, but I made it more fun.
Okay.
On number 1 on the list, we have move to the side. You cannot outrun snow murder. Instead of insulting Mother Nature by trying to beat in a race, you should instead run perpendicularly to the path of the incoming snow to get out of the way.
I will definitely be thinking of that while running from snow.
I mean, it's for real, I made the...
It's like when there's like a gun, like when you're getting like, or like the bow and arrow in Game of Thrones when he was just running it straight, and it was like, you got to run in a zigzag. But it's like, no one's actually thinking that when you're running from a bow and arrow or guns.
Yeah. No, it's fair. It's fair. I'm trying to make them funny so that in the instance that you are in this situation for whatever reason, like if you dare to go on a mountain where snow is for whatever thing that possessed you, that you know what to do, just for safety. Number 2, grab something sturdy. A twist on the classic rock, paper, scissors comes avalanche, boulder, tree. Only one will win.
Oh, jeez.
Depending on the strength of the avalanche, boulders or trees might be strong enough to stand their ground. Holding on to one of these might keep you above the snow and also keep you from moving down the mountain. So that was not what the article said, but I was very proud of it. So you're welcome. In cases of avalanche happening, play avalanche, boulder, tree, and it can save your life. Number 3, swim. I thought that was cool because it's like snow is frozen waters.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's frozen water, so it's kind of like swimming. Try to mimic the snow's violent onslaught by thrashing violently yourself to stay on top of the snow. Staying on top will keep you from being buried under mounds of snow and debris, which just seems like a really smart plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to be buried underneath. There's a whole oxygen related thing that's associated with that. You can asphyxiate yourself. A lot of people die that way, which is sad.
Yes.
So number 4, hold one arm up. You should try to reach one arm up while you're going down the mountain if you can, so that if you get buried, you give your rescue team a literal hand in helping find you. Yeah, you get it. Yeah, that was actually from the article.
Good.
So
yeah, that's a good one. I get it because then you're like out and you're like, you got a little hand there and they're like, that's a human.
You're helping survive. You're helping yourself by helping other people find you. Number 5, create room to breathe. Most avalanche related fatalities, as I said before, are caused by asphyxiation. So if you're caught in an avalanche, it says try to cup your hands over your mouth while you're still moving so that you can create a small pocket of air that will last you about 30 minutes. That's how long you kind of have like a window. It also suggests kind of making space around your face so that if you're like you're under the snow, essentially it gives you a bigger pocket of air to survive on and kind of extend your time before you would start experiencing carbon monoxide poisoning from your own breath. Number 6 is stay calm. It seems silly, but you might reasonably panic if you're in this situation. But it notes that if you panic, your breath will quicken. It'll make your time and your window for survival shrink. And I added an additional number 7. Don't go there. Don't go snowy mountain. Why do you need, what are you trying to prove to the world and Mother Nature by testing it in this way?
Yeah, why you gotta be up there?
Yeah, like unless you live there, that's different. But like go for fun? No. It's not fun. You dislocate your knee, you break your ankle.
You suffocate.
Why? Yeah, suffocate. Like you could really hurt yourself. And as in Gabe's section, she said 90% of avalanches are caused by people.
Yeah, just being stupid up there.
So, like, do yourself a favor. Do the mountain a favor. Just don't go. Let them, new mountain, new me moment themselves. Like, without you. Just do that instead.
Give them space.
Yeah. And avalanches, why are they so terrifying? I think it goes without saying, honestly. But much like tsunamis, avalanches are scary in their suddenness. An unexpected and deadly way that nature can attack you. They can be easily avoided, though, just by not going to snow places.
Yeah.
Can't stress that enough. I really think that's like the key that people are missing in these scenarios.
I mean, you're not wrong in that there would be 0 deaths by avalanche if no one is where avalanche happens.
Yeah.
That's just
I feel the same exact way about the ocean, by the way. And I will never live coastally. I did it once because my mom forced me to by moving somewhere that was on the coast. And Hurricane Sandy immediately. It's a sign. Like, it's very much like, you don't belong here. And she wanted to stay. Like, our whole house flooded. We had to like walk through the water. I was terrified sharks would happen. It's just like, why? Just don't live in these places. But that's not an option. That's literally not an option for some people.
Yeah, not everyone can live in your house.
Yeah, and also like it's very much like the real estate is intentionally priced to trap people, which is really messed up. So I do not mean to be insensitive if like people do live in these areas and cannot help it. But if you don't and you go for fun, that's silly. Don't do that. That's a choice. That's different.
Don't go and investigate the mysterious deaths of 9 students and go to the same place and experience
like, unless
the same
you
thing.
got it. And the answer is you don't got it. Like,
You don't have to.
But what happened in the Dyatlov Pass incident? Like why are we talking about it? What happened during it? It actually was apparently solved. I put solved in quotes because no one actually survived the incident, so there's no way to know for certain what happened. But this is science's best guess. I think the Smithsonian Magazine's article have scientists finally unraveled the 60-year mystery surrounding 9 Russian hikers' deaths, written by Milan Sali for the information that I will be sharing. The article argues that there's a perfectly good non-conspiracy theory explanation for the incident that we can apparently thank the other Frozen film for. The Disney one with Elsa and Anna.
Crazy.
Yeah, no, it generally is.
So cool.
As well as 2 individuals named Johann Gaume and Alexander Huzrin. They state plainly that they do not claim to have solved this mystery, as no one survived to tell the story. But we are able to show plausibly of avalanche hypothesis for the first time through science. Like, we're able to kind of get it. So in the research that unfolded, National Geographic researchers, Gaume and Persson, used the animation code from the snow for the 2013 Disney film Frozen to create a simulation tool that could mimic the conditions from the incident. This data matched with the data from the cadaver tests conducted by General Motors in the 1970s, helped determine what happened to the human body when struck at different speeds, allowed for them to like kind of figure out how this avalanche in this specific scenario could cause the injuries that were shown in the incident. So the broken ribs, the, severe, like, kind of internal situation that was happening.
This is not the crossover that I ever thought would happen with GM and Disney's Frozen. Like, I never thought that we would have them to thank
for the solving of this incident, right? It's definitely wild.
Cool. Yeah.
So the authors of the study, Gaume and Persson, used historical records to recreate the mountain's environment on the night of the Dyatlov incident and attempted to address the seeming inconsistencies. Then, scientists write in the study, they simulated a slab avalanche, drawing on snow friction data and local topography, which revealed that the slope wasn't actually as shallow as it had seemed when they were first doing their research, to prove that a small snowslide could have swept through the area while leaving few traces behind. The authors theorized that catabolic, which is a fun word, winds, were fast-flowing tunnels of air propelled the force of gravity, transporting the snow down the mountain to the campsite. And essentially, they're arguing that because they cut into the slope to put their tent down, which there's actually like a cool image on the website if you feel interested, but they made a cut in the slope. Nothing would have happened if they didn't make that cut, essentially. But at a certain point, a crack could have formed and propagated, causing the snow slab to release. And if you're thinking like this snow is frozen, you know what I mean? Like hard. It's not just like light, fluffy, fun snowball time. It is like frozen snow ice time. It kind of showed that the heavy blocks of solid snow could have landed on the hikers as they slept, crushing their bones and causing injuries not typically associated with avalanches. If this was the case, the pair argues that those who had sustained less serious blows likely dragged their injured companions out of the tent in hopes of saving their lives. It's like, it's super sad. But it's interesting because it kind of offers some resolution to the situation since it was so strange. People were very like scared by it and concerned and did not understand what had happened. And it's especially scary for the folks who like think it was the government, you know, that the government would do that to people. Like that's horrifying. You do not want your government to be doing that. You want to be safe. They're supposed to take care of you if you live there. So
it's also not
arguably
super far from like what like is reasonable to assume from your government too, especially that government of that time. Like it was totally reasonable to be like they did something wrong.
Yeah. So there are skeptics of this theory, questioning like why the hikers would run into the snow without their clothes. But I honestly think if the snow landed on them while they were sleeping, why would they be fully in their hiking gear and their snow gear? Like if they were, or even just like getting ready for dinner, they would be in more casual clothes if it's warm inside their tent. So like I think it's reasonable to assume they wouldn't be in their full hiking gear if a giant slab of snow landed on their tent and was crushing them. Like you don't have time to put on your shoes in that situation. So I don't know. I think it makes sense. Obviously, I'm not a scientist. I've said that on multiple episodes, but it seems pretty legit.
Well, that and they also show that in the film too, because the one girl is like they're having sex in the tent or about to again, and like she doesn't get her clothes on. She was running in like in her underwear, and he had clothes on somehow. But it was like because it was just happening, and it just took the amount of time for someone to be like avalanche for them to move.
Yeah, and people aren't able to get dressed that fast all the time. Like you know, if you're butt naked, it's gonna take a minute to get your layers, your shoes, your everything back onto your body. So I think it's reasonable. I think this is probably legit. It's science's best guess. I think it's funny that they claim it's like it's solved in the title, but like that the people were like, no, we think there's no way to know, but
this is the
we
closest
think.
to an answer that we can ever get because we were not there.
Yeah.
We don't have footage or time travel.
But yeah, I thought it was interesting. I think, obviously, this is a horrible situation that happened, and it's cool to have some variety of closure that wasn't from the worst ever film students that were in this film. That was not the weird science. Like, that was not science. It was like a weird sci-fi time travel twist where you have the descent monsters, but they it was really strange. And it was honestly like very disrespectful to the incident itself.
Yeah, the whole film that like
it was totally just like using the knowledge of the incident to like boost their film rating, like to get people to go see it thinking that it is having to do with that, and it's not. So it's rude.
Yeah, especially because like it was such a well-known theory, and I mean I enjoyed that they do in the beginning throw out some of those, but it was very obvious that the characters and then by extension the creators of this film were obnoxious and not actually caring about them. Like it like even the main character with her like being like, I had dreams that I was going to find it and like I'm destined for this. It was never really like I'm destined to figure out what happened to those poor individuals. It was like I was destined to be the one who figures this mystery out.
Yeah. Which
is like it's super rude and is also like, you know, some of the motivation for a lot of true crime anyway.
Yeah. And I mean it's if they were trying to show how disrespectful Americans can be in traveling,
they got it.
Like that's a horror movie in and of itself.
Yeah.
And they achieved that. But if they were trying to like pay respects to the people who were lost in this incident, they 100% could have just had Russian people who were from Russia, like, and were interested in what happened to people who were like from their country that died, and like paid adequate respect to it and tried to uncover an actual mystery. That I would have watched that. That would have been cool. like
Yeah,
probably
and there
more
was a lot of
interesting.
people, like a lot of the information that came out came from people who were closely related. So like there was a gentleman who was a part of the expedition, but got hurt early on and ended up having to turn back. And so he reported on some things and actually wrote a book. There was someone who was young and attended the funeral of the students when they were really young, and then later in like their adult age wrote books on it. And that, I think that was the one who wrote about like aliens. But what it is to say is that like there's an interest in that country, and there are people who are actually directly related to the people who are harmed that could have a more understandable and like accepting obsession with it. Like imagine if that was like, oh, that was my aunt who perished and I want to know what happened to her, or like and I went to school to do the same thing that they did and I'm going to recreate it to get to the bottom, because like mysterious deaths like that do traumatize and affect families, and there's an obsession that happens that we definitely see and could have totally reasonably put that through. And like also an understanding of like it was also very rude to Russia, because like there's so many like Cold War like digs that they say, like the Americans clearly don't have any respect for the people there and don't see them as people. Like they just see them as tools. Like there's a woman who's like bearing her heart about what she experienced, and they didn't care. They were just like, oh, this is like good. Oh, it's spooky. I'm spooked. Instead of being like, oh, this woman's traumatized because she saw real actual dead bodies.
And they took it as an opportunity to just zoom in on this chick who's like doing the sound for it. It was super gross.
Because she's hot. Yeah.
And it's, if you think about the fact that there's actually the person who came back and wrote a book, they put him in a mental hospital in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is rude if that's not true. Like,
yeah.
They're basically
they
had,
like conspiracy theories and stuff. And the fact that like, I mean, that they made it so that the people who worked at the sanitarium were also villains, because like, you're keeping the truth from us. It's like, no, they're probably trying to take care of that person who is like clearly needs help, and you're just traipsing in here and you think you deserve answers for something.
You're trying to like take advantage of the mental state that is in play. Like that's really rude.
The only good thing for that is that they didn't actually talk to him, because that happens
because they would have been a horrible job. Yeah, they would have been so rude.
So often in horror, they're like, you have to tell us what it is. We're going to force you to relive this traumatic event that you are institutionalized for, because we need the answers. And that happens all the time in horror. So I'm happy that they just got a message that said, don't go. Instead, that she has like photographic memory for and can spell out in the snow. That's all that's to say that avalanches are scary. Yeah. And if it happens, most likely it's your fault or your friend's fault or whoever's there with you. Don't go traipsing around crime scenes for no good reason.
Don't yell when you're in the snow.
Yeah, don't yell in the snow, and don't watch this movie if you can help it. Don't watch it. We watched genuinely it, so you horrible. Don't have to. Yeah. It was bad. It was bad. And I love found footage. If you want a good found footage film, hit me up. I got it. Yeah. I got you.
But it wasn't this.
At length, I can any sub genre that you want experienced. I got you. But maybe we'll have to do some screening parties to watch like the one where the sharks were in the grocery store and the fire breathing spiders, and
100%
now Avalanche Sharks. So we could just, I want that, and I really want to watch the film where the sand eats you.
We should have a series where we watch a bunch of different like ridiculous shark or spider films, even though I would cry the entire time. But I feel like that'd just be really funny. And then also the one where the sand eats you, the one where the sushi eats you.
Yeah. Those are good.
The couch murder, murderous couch. I think that's good.
Now, the hair, bad hair.
Yeah.
We watched that.
Classics.
With sharks, I just think of Deep Blue Sea, and it's such a good film. It's so scary. It's so good. Black guys survived. It's a phenomenal film. It's 10 stars.
I don't know if I've seen it.
You would never see it. That's good. It's under the water. Has to do with sharks.
Okay. Yep. You're right.
It's so good. It's so good.
Like my nightmare.
But that's not a weird one, because it makes sense, because the ocean is where the sharks are. So it was just that people were in the place that sharks
I do
usually
think
are.
it would be fun if we did that where we had like remember how in the movie we first started, we had reactions of us
Yeah.
watching the films.
Yeah.
We watch a bunch of films that horrify me, and then we
Yeah.
watch a bunch of films that horrify you, and
We should do
compile
like reaction videos.
the evidence. Yeah.
We should do. I think if you want to see reaction videos of the ghouls, let us know and we'll do it.
Yeah.
Because we get scared. We still do actually get scared. Genuinely. So,
but like we know we'll get scared of those, so it's like,
yeah,
it'd be fun.
Yeah, it would be fun. It would be fun. So, yeah, don't get married.
They'll eat your kids.
Yeah, or your kids will go where they
Be
shouldn't.
the worst.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Maybe they deserved it. Don't go where you shouldn't be. All right, bye.
Bye.